Well, again, I'm Bill Russell, president of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, and we have another Focus Friday. And this is presented by Novant Health, and we have Kathy Ames on board. Kathy, would you share a little bit about what's going on at Novant?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Bill. And as always, Novant Health Huntersville Medical Center is excited to support this program. At the hospital, we are continuing to stay busy, even though it's the summer. We have started with our robust junior volunteer program. I think we have about 40 to 50 juniors that have embraced our hospital this summer in various different avenues and spots in the hospital, from helping out in the emergency department and surgical services, at our front desk, and on our nursing unit. So it's great to see the youth there. It invigorates us to be able to share with them. Like I said, continue to stay busy with our emergency department as well as our pediatric emergency department. Surgeries, inpatient. I'm happy to say that, we have very few COVID patients these days. And I know staffing is always a big topic here. And we're starting to see staffing starting to rebound, not as much agency staff as we've had in the past, which is great for us. So just continue to stay busy and to grow, and don't only come visit us as a patient. Come by just to say hello, and we'll give you a tour and show you our beautiful facility. Are there any questions for me about the hospital, Bill?
Kathy, are you still running the farmers market out there?
You know what? Our biggest farmer, Unity Farms, bailed out on us this year. My understanding is that they're more in grocery stores. So our farmers market has taken a pause. We're trying to figure something out. Maybe we just have two large markets this summer, but we're not, and it's definitely a miss for us.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of improvements going on at Gilead Road right there. Matter of fact, I think that's going to be talked to Anthony yesterday, our town manager, and I think those are coming to a head pretty soon. But that's going to be really nice. But we appreciate everything you do. Jeff, Novant is also the presenting sponsor of both our leadership Lake Norman and our junior leadership. And when we ask our junior leaders, our high school juniors, what session they enjoyed most of leadership Lake Norman, it's always healthcare. And it's always, Novant and the helicopter that they bring out and going through the hospital and getting the tour. So again, Kathy, we appreciate what you do and appreciate Novant. And thank you very much for being our presenting sponsor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And
Jeff,
we wear you proudly.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, I'm really interested in the program today. Mike, I didn't share with you or Jeff, my father, who passed away in 2019, when he got out of college at the University of South Carolina, he went into insurance and worked at a business called First Insurance Agency in Rock Hill that later became People's. And from the time he graduated from college in 1959 until the day he retired, he worked for People's First Insurance Agency. One career. I mean, not many people do that, but he really enjoyed it. But the thing was, when I went around in Rock Hill, people knew my dad. Because he took care of them. So important thing that our insurance agency does for our businesses. Jeff, you're going to MC and introduce our speaker.
I will. Thank you, Bill. Well, I've got the distinct pleasure and a little bias because Mike is also a personal friend and good friend. I've known Mike for almost 20 years now coming on. And Mike Causey, who is with us today, is the commissioner of insurance for the entire state of North Carolina. A lot of people may or may not understand or recognize that it is a statewide elected office, just like the governor or our U.S. senators. So there's a person who's got, millions of people dependent upon him and the role that he plays. I will also tell you, and don't normally say this about elected officials, but this is probably one of the most honest, highest integrity people you will ever meet in your life. Mike, it's a blessing to have you here. It's amazing the role and what you've done in this office. I think you're in about year 7 coming up. We're going to be the first to ask whether you're going to run again. We'll get to that a little bit later. But Mike serves, has all responsibility. As he was teasing earlier, people always ask, what kind of insurance do we sell in the state through the Department of Insurance? And they don't. They regulate it. And a lot of people also, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking, need to understand he's responsible as the state's fire marshal as well for the safety from that perspective, building inspections and things. So with that, Mike, I'm going to give you the floor. Appreciate you taking your Friday morning to be here and kind of give us a little insight and update on what's going on your end of the world.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And it's an honor for me to be with you this morning. And Bill, I need to take Jeff around with me around the state. He does a pretty good job with these introductions. And I'm familiar a little with people's life because I started my insurance career in Charlotte with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. I was a student at UNC-Charlotte in their engineering program. And I was in the library one day studying engineering, and these gentlemen with suits and ties walked in, and they had been recruiting on campus and had advertised all over the Charlotte papers, "We train, we'll pay you to train." And they got my attention because I was broke, and started studying about insurance and got hired by Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. And so I did a lot of recruiting down in Rock Hill at Winthrop College, and we knew people with people's life, so has a great history. I also want to give a shout out to Novant Health. I was just there in their Kernersville facility yesterday, and I twisted my knee. I was there for another reason, but I had to get a little help. I tore a meniscus or something, you know how that goes. And I will say every time I've been to Novant, and of course we have other, Cone Health's a big one in Greensboro, but I've had a chance to work with Novant. We partnered with Novant Health in Wilmington for a drug take-back program several weeks ago on a Saturday. It was very successful. But they have just the nicest people, the most friendly people, and they don't keep you waiting. I mean, I've been to other health facilities where you call, you stay on the phone forever, and nobody picks up the phone. You go to the waiting room, you sit there and wait an hour before somebody sees you. That's not the case with Novant, but I didn't come here to put in a plug for Novant, but I just thought I would. But we help people at the Department of Insurance. And Jeff, I know you don't even know anybody that's had a problem getting an insurance claim paid or handled, but people do have problems getting insurance companies to do the right thing and pay the claims in a timely manner and pay a fair amount, especially with automobile accidents, sometimes with health insurance, sometimes with homeowners. But we have a great consumer division that is available to anybody that wants to go to our website, ncdoi.gov, or there's a little button on there if you want to file a complaint. It takes about 45 seconds, and they can give us a call on the toll-free number. It's on the screen, but it's 855-408-1212. And we have real people answering the phones Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And I'll give you an example of the type of feedback I get from the public. I got a letter a few months back from a man in Western North Carolina, had all sorts of degrees, a PhD and lots of other letters coming off the end of his business card. But he said for 5 months, he was in a battle with his insurance company and another insurance company, and he was stuck in the middle. He couldn't get anywhere, and out of sheer desperation and frustration and not knowing where to turn, he calls the Department of Insurance, files a complaint, and he said by the end of the week, I had the money in my bank account. The case was settled. So he wrote that letter to thank me, which I didn't have anything to do with. It was our consumer folks, but they do a really good job. Our department does a great job helping people get a fair claim settlement. And I think a lot of people don't realize this.
Mike, take us through a little bit. What are all the different services that DOI provides? Besides, okay, you have a problem with a claim. That's obviously you have advocates in your corner helping advance that. So what are the other things you guys do?
It would take me a half a day to go through every section, but we have 27 divisions. But as insurance commissioner, I also serve proudly as the state fire marshal. We're over 1,219 fire departments in the state that we work with. We do the actual safety class, ISO class rating inspections for all fire, not all fire departments, but the majority of fire departments, all the fire departments in towns under 100,000 population, and all the non-military fire departments. And if you take all the different fire stations, some fire departments have 4 or 5 fire stations. So we have over 2,000 fire stations. And this is important because how your local fire department is rated on a scale of 10 to 1 has a direct bearing on what you pay for homeowners insurance in that fire district. So if you're out in a rural county with an unrated fire department of class 10, you're going to pay the highest insurance rates on your home. If you're in a bigger town, Mooresville was the first smaller town in North Carolina to get the class 1, which is the best of the best. The first class 1 was in Greensboro. Then it was like Charlotte, Raleigh, the bigger cities. But when I took office, we had 6 class 1 fire departments. Today, we have 28. That includes towns like Hickory, Wilson, Rocky Mount, and some of our smaller places like Granite Quarry and Rowan County that people wouldn't think about. We have about 85 class 2 departments, up from a dozen when I took office in 2017. We also oversee collection agencies, travel clubs, motor clubs, that type thing. We're in charge of the State Building Code Council. We oversee the State Building Code Council, do the administration for that. Now, that's a separate agency, mostly appointed by the governor. But if anybody has an issue with building inspections, it's our office that has the final say on appeal. We oversee engineering codes, and I'm essentially in charge of life safety on public buildings. So all of this property the state owns, which is owned by the people, over 15,000 buildings, the insurance commissioner and state fire marshal is in charge of making sure they're properly insured, risk management for those buildings. And you know, I could spend a lot of time talking about the financial oversight. We're over insurance companies, insurance agents, all of that regulations. We have 23 boards and commissions, which the department oversees, and all types of programs that help people, like the Seniors Health Insurance Information Program, our SHIP program, with 1,000 volunteers all across the state. The Safe Kids North Carolina, where a lot of our law enforcement, fire departments have these child passenger safety seat inspection stations. We train those folks and work with them. And programs like Operation Medicine Drop, our drug take-back events, where we work with the law enforcement, especially our sheriffs in all 100 counties, police chiefs, and recently, as I said, hospitals sometimes. Novant Health recently helped us with an event to get prescription drugs out of the medicine cabinets and keep them out of hands of children or drug dealers. So that's just a real quick overview. We also have sworn law enforcement officers that can make arrests in any county or any town in the state. We primarily go after insurance fraud and arson, but they can pull over a traffic violator if it's necessary. That's not our job, but we've had situations with drunk driving and so forth where that's been necessary, and we do partner with the State Highway Patrol on any traffic instances. We also regulate bail bonds and bail bond surety bonds. So that's just a small part. And I think Barry's telling me I probably missed a half a dozen, but you get the ideas. There's a lot of insurance fraud out there. So we have a fraud control group, and that's where our law enforcement officers, our statewide sworn officers, put most of their focus on going after insurance fraud.
And that's one. So since you mentioned it, let's jump off into that area. We're going to come back to the fire departments and the inspections and things, because I don't think people realize what you actually do in that. But the insurance fraud's maybe one of your biggest areas. And talk us through, or take us through, where do you see fraud typically happening? I mean, you hear of things like people scamming the insurance companies for their roofs, or you see elderly people being taken advantage of, or, you know, you got healthcare fraud as far as Medicaid, Medicare. And if you can maybe walk us through it, and how do those programs work? How do you identify them? How do you then pursue them?
Well, we depend on the public, and we depend on insurance companies, insurance agents, and really anybody that suspects fraud. You don't have to know it's fraud, but if you suspect that it may be fraud, give it to us. We have a toll-free number you can call, or we have a direct fraud line that people can call. Barry, if you'll get that number, I'll give it out to them. And we'll investigate. And sometimes people think it's fraud and it's not, but fraud can be anywhere, any place. The biggest amount of fraud is certainly in healthcare. I went to a fraud conference with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners and the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud. And I was told by experts in healthcare that a minimum of 40%, 4 out of 10 health insurance claims are fraudulent. Now, when it comes to all claims, it's between 1 and 2 out of 10. But we have people that make a career out of fraud. They stage accidents, they stage traffic accidents, they get paid. I had a retired state trooper tell me last week, we saw an accident on the side of the road. There was 2 cars, and we saw 9 or 10 people standing there. And the trooper jokingly said, well, 4 of them just hopped out of another car and said they were in that car when it got hit and their neck was hurting. So you've got that type of fraud. But does
that go very far, Mike? Are those claims able to get pretty far in the process?
Oh, you'd be amazed at how many of them get paid. I'd say more get paid than are caught. We've had insurance agents, unfortunately, and again, most insurance agents are honest and upstanding citizens, but no matter what profession, whether it's medical or legal or business, there's always people that are going to look after themselves to the detriment of others. We've had people that not turn in insurance premiums to the companies and put it in personal accounts. On the flip side of that, we've had insurance companies that deliberately underpaid claims when they know that they should have paid a larger amount. I won't call any names, but we're investigating a very large insurance company now on total loss claims where they systematically shaved off $1,000 to $2,000 on every claim to keep in the company's coffers rather than going to the poor people that deserve that claim settlement. And so many people, especially our poor people that don't want to hire a lawyer, they don't have any extra money, and they get that settlement check from the insurance company, and they may be due a $3,000 claim, and they get an $1,800 claim, and they take it and cash it and spend the money, and it's settled. So we need to know before that check is cashed and signed. If it's something that's not right, people need to call me or call our office, and we'll investigate it. But you mentioned the roofing contractors. There's a tremendous amount of roofing contractor fraud after every storm. You know, we can have a little hailstorm, and you'll have 100 adjusters coming in from out of state. You'll have roofing contractors that say, I think you've got hail damage. Let me go on your roof and see. And we've actually had cameras, hidden cameras, to detect people going on rooftops causing the damage. The people that were there to fix it were causing the damage so they could get the money from that insurance claim. So, you know, we could talk all day about fraud, Jeff, but it's prevalent, it's out there, and you need to be aware of it.
And what can the average consumer do to minimize their exposure to fraud or being taken advantage of?
Well, I think be honest when you're filling out a claim report. You know, we've had people with a house break-in, for example, they had their tools stolen out of their tool shed, and they know the chainsaw they had, they bought at a yard sale for $30, and they'll put on that they paid $450 for something they paid $30 for. And you know, a lot of people say, well, it's just the insurance company. But the problem is we're all paying for this fraud, and it's almost 20 cents out of every dollar that you pay for insurance premiums, you're going to cover fraud. So if you don't get tough on fraud, and if you don't go after it, that's going to continue to drive up our insurance premiums. And before you know it, we'll be paying 30 cents out of every dollar to cover fraud.
Here's one thing that we see, you know, with the snatch and grab phenomenon that's going on around the country. And I've seen some of the larger companies, and I guess we'll stay away from naming them, that have taken policies that if something's being, for lack of a better term, simplified, we'll call it shoplifted, they don't confront the people taking it, and they don't want it reported. And is that stuff that would end up coming to you, or besides the police? Because I assume they've got insurance that's covering that loss, and I assume that's, again, cost being passed on to the rest of the consumers.
It just it's beyond my thinking to see how anybody could allow that type of thing, like they do in some of these larger cities, just to turn your back up. But we need to get tough on shoplifting. We need to get tough on all types of fraud. And again, our focus is primarily insurance fraud. But if it's anything that's tied to an insurance claim, then we certainly can come in and investigate and look into it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I will say one other thing. When I took office, the Department of Insurance was doing a good job with what they had, but they were very understaffed, and they only had 18 sworn law enforcement officers to go out around the state. And we had 57 counties that never had any arrest for fraud. And you think there's 57 counties with no fraud, but so we've worked hard working with the legislature, and the Department of Insurance is a self-funded agency. So we bring in a lot of money to the state of North Carolina, hundreds of millions of dollars. When I took office, we were bringing in over $600 million a year. Today, it's over 900 million, almost $1 billion that's going to the general fund. And so that's why, Jeff, you know, when you're a senator, you heard me saying, well, let us keep a little more of our money for our budget. And we actually hired 43 additional people in 2017. 3 of those were the fire department inspectors I mentioned to help inspect our fire departments. that made a tremendous increase in the revenue that came into the state and the improvements in fire departments and the lowering of premiums on homeowners for the people living in those fire districts. The first 3 people we hired were attorneys that were prosecutors, that were experienced prosecutors, and that's made all the difference because those 3 prosecutors have worked with our district attorneys to get these small fraud cases and other cases that in the past had sat there not going through the courts for 2 or 3 years. We're getting them settled in 60 to 90 days. And we now have over 60 sworn law enforcement officers. We could probably use 600, but 60 stay very busy in going after this fraud. And again, all it takes is for you to just tell us, we're not sure if this is fraud or not, but look into it.
For the average consumer, you're in the business and have been your whole career. How do you identify and find a good insurance agent? What's your advice?
I personally like an agent that's local, that you can pick up the phone and call, or you can talk with. And we have a number of great companies across North Carolina. We have a number of companies that are based here in North Carolina. And I would say there's associations like the Big I, the Independent Agents Association. Our independent insurance agents represent multiple companies and they can shop around for you. You can also look at companies that have won the J.D. Power Award for customer service. Again, not getting into specifics, but companies like North Carolina-based companies like North Carolina Farm Bureau, they have offices in every county in the state. You don't have to be a farmer to buy insurance from them. You become a member of North Carolina Farm Bureau. But whether it's a Farm Bureau, your independent insurance agents, or other local agencies, Bill talked about his dad being with People's Insurance. A lot of our smaller companies like that were based in the Carolinas have been bought out by larger companies. I think American General owns most all of those smaller companies today. But I tend to stay away from those that do a lot of advertising on television for the cheapest rates, because those are the ones that have the most problems when it comes to paying a fair settlement on their claims. And there's some large companies that are very good companies, and there's some large companies that are not very good. We keep track at the Department of Insurance of the complaints filed, and with insurance companies like health insurance, you got Blue Cross and Blue Shield, a local company. You have other companies that are in here. We also work with the Affordable Care Act, ACA, for those folks that need help with health insurance. So I think do your homework, look up the Better Business Bureau complaints, and if a company has thousands and thousands of irritated customers online, you want to stay away from those folks.
Question, and then I'm going to turn it over. There's a couple questions out, but are we the last state with a rate commission?
The Rate Bureau, I believe we are. North Carolina has a unique system. The North Carolina Rate Bureau, and the Rate Bureau represents the insurance industry, and they're the ones that actually set the rates. As commissioner, I just have two choices. I can say yes or no. And so far, every time they've come to me with a rate increase, I've said no because we didn't feel it was justified. But we have negotiated some settlements that allowed them to raise rates slightly because you want the companies to be able to stay in business and not pull out of North Carolina. But that's how it works.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between having a rate bureau and how they go about establishing rates a little bit? and versus how other states do it, and is the kind of the pros and cons maybe?
Well, I think our system works very well. And I say that because when it comes to automobile insurance or car insurance, there's only 3 states in the United States of America that have lower average car insurance rates than North Carolina. So I think that speaks very highly of the system that we have. Now, homeowners insurance, we're the lowest in the Southeast. We're right in the middle nationally, but we're never going to be the lowest in homeowners because of our coastline,
Hurricanes,
the severe weather that we get. If you want to see high homeowners, look to Florida. Florida and Oklahoma are 2 of the highest. Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana, they all have really high homeowners insurance rates. Now, health insurance is a little harder for the Department of Insurance to regulate. So the health insurance tends to be a little higher in North Carolina than some of the other states. But the rate bureau really doesn't come into play as much on the health insurance.
one thing I wanted before we get off this topic, I know Lee, you had maybe a more detailed question. That you may want to still ask or not?
Sure. So my mom's a retired North Carolina teacher, and she's also one of the thousands of people nationwide that 20 years ago bought into long-term care insurance. And it's Genworth, which is, kind of the big, one of the big, that's now Mass Mutual. So she was part of the class action suit that reconfigured, gave them new offers, returned a lot of premiums. And now it seems like her premiums are back to kind of doubling every year. And so that was I appreciate your answer about the rate commission, but we're trying to understand, does your department approve those rate hikes?
We are very limited. I'll tell you, long-term care has been a nightmare in America because when it first came out, there were some 2,000 companies writing long-term care, and they all underpriced it. Whoever the actuaries were working on that project, whoever the consultants were, they should all have been fired because they all missed the mark by a long shot. Because now some people made out great. They got paid a lot of money, but what the insurance industry failed to realize when they started with the long-term care, they greatly underestimated the longevity, and people are living much longer than ever was anticipated, and they've been sicker more. So the bills, the more people have gone in to use the long-term care. So as a result, the vast majority of the companies that started selling long-term care went bankrupt. They're broke. They went out of business. They're no longer there. You mentioned Genworth. They've changed their name, but they're one of the few still left in the business. But it is been very difficult because these companies are paying out more in claims for the most part than they're taking in. As you're right, there's been a number of class action lawsuits, but we're very limited in our authority over long-term care. So we do have some say in it, but as far as us setting the rates, we don't have much to do with it. It's more at the federal level than it is the state level. But we've done everything we can here to make sure our policyholders are protected and to make sure that nobody's getting rates unfairly raised about it, unless it's something beyond our control, and we make that known.
Well, thank you for that. I'm also an estate planning attorney, so I have a lot of clients come in with long-term care concerns. So the more I know, the better. Thank you.
Well, some people can say, well, as much as I'm paying now in premiums, I would have been better to put that money in the bank or other investments. And that's also a factor, but it is very, very difficult. I think if somebody was looking to buy long-term care today, I'd be very skeptical and very cautious.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mike, I'm going to shift direction a little bit back to the fire. Obviously, fire and police protection are top priorities for any municipality to provide to their citizens. One of the things I don't think people realize is, and you talked about it briefly, is dealing with raiding fire departments as an example, but that is associated with an activity being an inspection. Can you talk about a little bit what is involved in an inspection and what's the frequency they need to be done, and how do we locally help our own fire departments?
Sure, I'll be glad to. First, I want to give out this number for fraud, and it's 919-807-6840. It's 919-807-6840. Now, that's what we give out to our law enforcement partners, but anybody can call that number, and it's just like Crime Stoppers. It's totally anonymous. You don't have to get involved. Just give us the information, and we'll look into it. There's different kinds of inspections, Jeff. On the fire stations, they are ideally, you'd want your fire department to be looked at every 4 to 5 years on the ISO safety inspections. When I took office January 1st of 2017, they had great people doing this job, but we had a lot of fire departments that hadn't seen an inspection in 20 years or longer. So I got the printout of every fire department and the last date of their ISO safety inspection, class inspection. And again, some of them been 10, 15 years, 20. There was one in Craven County that had been 28 years since last inspected.
Didn't need, it was always top of the list, right?
Pardon?
I'm saying it probably didn't need an inspection. They just stayed on top of it, right?
Could be. But I was told that we only had 5 people to cover the 100 counties with, over 1,200 fire departments, and we were spread too thin. So I said, well, what if we hired some more folks? So all we did was hire 3 more inspectors, and they came on board November of 2017. We went from 5 inspectors to 8 inspectors, and those 8 folks, 2 of those were former fire chiefs. One was a former county fire marshal. But since they started doing this, 80%, you think about that, 80% of the 1,219 departments in North Carolina have improved their class rating. And as I mentioned, Mooresville Fire Department, Mooresville was the first Class 1 fire department in a city or town under 100,000 population. So that's an honor, a feather in the town of Mooresville that they'll always hold that honor. And since then, we had over 20 more fire departments join Mooresville. So we're now at 28 Class 1s. These inspections don't come about because of just that fire department. It's a team effort, community effort. It depends on water supply, their equipment, the surrounding departments, and how they work with mutual aid, helping each other, and the response time to get to the fire scene or to the accident scene. And there's over 100 rating factors. So our inspectors go in, they meet with the chief and the staff, and they let them know these are the things we'll be looking at. If you've got some things you need to improve or work on, the certification and training of the firefighters. North Carolina has more levels of firefighter certification than any other state. We do 54 levels of firefighter certification. That's all through our office, the Office of State Fire Marshal. So it's very complex and complicated, but the simple thing is that if you're in a fire department that has a class 1 or class 2 rating, or even class 3, you're in good shape.
So as you finish out this term and perhaps start another, what are the overcoming the lack of staffing, getting organizations up to speed like the fire departments? Kind of what do you see as the next focus for your agency?
I want to continue to focus on customer service and make sure that the people of North Carolina get their claims paid fairly and in a time quickly. I say timely manner, but there's no excuse for dragging out a claim, in my opinion, 4 or 5 months like we've seen in the past. I think we're going to continue focus on fraud, going after consumer fraud. I hope to continue to expand our law enforcement capabilities, maybe bring in more lab capabilities. We hired our first dog, our canine, Nancy, our arson dog, and I'll have to thank State Farm Insurance Company made this possible. These dogs are expensive, $10,000 to $20,000 per arson dog. State Farm made a grant possible, made the dog possible. We had to provide the manpower with the handler, and the dog and the handler both go to New Hampshire for 6-week training, very intense training. And Nancy's been all over North Carolina. So my goal is to get 6 more dogs and their handlers to help investigate the many cases of arson that we have to investigate across North Carolina.
Now I'm going to get in trouble saying this, and my wife's name is Nancy, but she is clearly the big dog in our house.
I believe you.
So let me ask you this, and I appreciate you taking this amount of time with us today. I'm just going to shift a little bit off the business side. What do you do for fun?
I have a farm, and every spare minute I'm on a tractor or doing something on the farm to try to keep that up. We're in Guilford County, so we're like a lot of these areas that are growing in population. There are housing developments all around us, but my goal is to preserve the green space and keep some open space and keep it. I'm in a voluntary agriculture district, so protecting our farmland is very important to me. I know in Johnston County, there was a farmer that had 164 acres, and a developer came in and said, we'll pay you $16.5 million. So that kind of money is hard to turn down and hard to ignore. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't get a phone call or something in the mail wanting to buy some land, and it's not for sale. I'm trying to just hang on to it. I plant wildflowers in the summertime. Prior to this job, I worked for the Department of Transportation. I oversaw the Adopt the Highway program in 100 counties, and the roadside environmental unit was all about keeping our roadsides clean, free of litter, and they did the wildflower program, planting the flowers on our highways. And I try to plant 15, 20 acres of flowers every summer, just for the bees and the birds and as pollinators.
Let me ask you this one then before we let you go. Last question. Have you given thought to whether you're going to run again?
I will be running for re-election in 2024. Yes, sir.
And then, because you kind of are our Abraham Lincoln of North Carolina, you realize that. I mean, what's that?
If you say so. I know I ran several times and didn't make it, but
4 times and kept getting closer. Of course, we were controlled by the other side of the aisle for a long time. But it's I'm going to let you go here as we end. But Mike, what you've done turning around the Department of Insurance, and I think it's just an indicator. Put somebody in the role. As citizens, we need to be educated in who we're voting for, but let somebody who's a professional in the industry and knows it inside and out. And that has just turned things around within North Carolina. So we are, again, very fortunate.
Jim, let me make one point. Most of the insurance commissioners have been attorneys. Now, the first insurance commissioner that was initially appointed, James Young, in 1899, owned an insurance agency. And I believe, you can go check it, but I believe I'm the 11th insurance commissioner. So I'm the first Republican insurance commissioner, not to get into politics, but we were all Democrats, I wasn't, but my family was, back in the day. But I'm the 11th commissioner in 125 years. But the first one was in the insurance business and not a non-attorney. I'm a non-attorney, but all those in between have been attorneys. And I will say we've got good people at the department. Many of the people I have today in leadership positions were there under previous administration. So I give a shout out to the quality of the people that have worked at the Department of Insurance for decades. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for getting out to the public what the North Carolina Department of Insurance does. And again, if anybody wants to go to the website, ncdoi.gov, they'll have more information than they need, but you can find what you need to get help. If you can't, just give me a call, send me an email, because we're here to help. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Mike.
You,
Appreciate you being here, Mike, and tell Barry, appreciate the help in getting things set up this morning as well. And we'll see you out and about as always.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Back to you.
Commissioner, before you go, what's that fraud number again?
The fraud number is 919-807-6840. That's 807-6840.
And we'll have that information on the description on this YouTube video that we put out, as well as the website you just alluded to.
I will make one more plug. We're always looking for good people. So we have a number of good job openings for the Department of Insurance, and not all are in Raleigh. We have a regional office in Gastonia. We have people in every county in North Carolina. So if somebody, especially if you're in accounting or CPA, legal background, insurance background, customer service background, looking for a job change, or we post our job openings online, and as does the state of North Carolina. But if somebody's out there, looking for a career opportunity, we'd like to hear from them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jeff, we started off the program with a presentation by Novant Health, and we want to thank Kathy for joining us and thank Novant Health for being the presenting sponsor. We also talked about the Leadership Lake Norman program that they sponsor, and the applications for the Adult Leadership Lake Norman program is up on the website, as well as juniors. So if you've got a high school junior in any of our area Lake Norman high schools, public, charter, private, or homeschooled, consider putting them through the Junior Leadership Lake Norman program. Again, both of those are on the website. Jeff, who's up for July in terms of Focus Friday?
Okay, July is going to be Paul Shoemaker, who is consistently ranked one of the top lobbyists and campaign consultants in the country. He's actually running a couple governor races and several U.S. Senate races around the country to give us a little preview into the fall and to next year. The following month in August, we have North Carolina Speaker Tim Moore lined up for us. And then the following month, we have our Attorney General and Democratic candidate for governor, Josh Stein.
And I think Paul was involved in Senator Tillis's campaign when Senator Tillis ran, right?
That is correct.
Yep. So look forward to that. And July 11th, we have the Healthcare Summit coming up, where we've got three of our healthcare providers. Mike, we've got Novant, we've got Iredell County Health Systems, and we also have Atrium, the execs of all three, on July the 11th. And a panel discussion, once again, emceed by Jefftarte. So that'll be a really good program. Jeff, thank you for what you do in terms of being our advocate for public policy. And Mike, again, thank you for sharing today the information about the insurance. Yeah. Everybody have a really good weekend, and thank you very much for joining the Focus Friday.
Okay. Bye.
Here all.